Alright, I'm back for more Autistic History and the Autism Wars. This is part 82 of a series. I'm jumping right back into an article that was published in the Jewish Exponent October 23rd, 1997, titled The Anguish of Autism, and it was written by Sally Friedman. And picking back up, Shestack and Iversen's son was just diagnosed with autism at 21 months old is where we left off before, and picking back up from there, this is a quote. "I was stuck in denial at first," said Shestack. "I couldn't talk about it. I couldn't face it." Iversen said she can remember thinking that her son had been abducted. "Our child was disappearing before our eyes, and now we had the reason," she said. "Things grew more difficult in the second and third year. Our son was under siege," said Iversen. "He ground his teeth, he shrieked, he couldn't sleep at night, and he was hyperactive beyond belief. He had dark circles under his eyes from sheer exhaustion." Back in the 1950s, said Shestack, psychiatrist Bruno Bettelheim had speculated in The Empty Fortress that autism was a result of refrigerator mothers who caused autism by being remote. That tragic mistake set the entire autism research effort back 40 years, he said. "It is now recognized that autism is a medical disorder, one that usually strikes during the first 2 years of life." According to Dr. Ricky Robinson, a pediatrician at the UCLA Medical Center in Los Angeles, UCLA, a diagnosis of autism is generally made on the basis for defining characteristics, difficulty with receiving and expressing language, abnormal responses to sensory stimuli, resistance to change and routines, and difficulty with social interaction. From those with autism, everyday experiences can be an assault, said Robinson, who serves on the board of Cure Autism Now, or CAN. A terrible sensory assault. For example, we might be slightly bothered by a lawnmower's hum, but we'd learn to absorb it. The pediatrician said an autistic child would be profoundly affected by what would become a terrible sensory assault. Robinson describes the treatments for the disorder as a wooing process, a systematic attempt to meet the child on his or her social emotional level through intensive therapy. As they pursued therapy for Dove, Shestack and Iversen founded Cure Autism Now, 1993, with a very focused mission. "We saw a great need for funding research, especially genetic research, and for pilot studies into various aspects of autism. CAN is also working to bring together neurologists, pediatricians, and developmental specialists to establish guidelines for comprehensive medical workup for children suspected of having autism. Because early intervention is vital, and because the prevailing technique is to enter the world of the autistic child as soon as possible, a well-defined medical workup is also essential," said Robinson. As the research goes forward, 5-year-old Dove, who now has a sister, Miriam, almost 4, and a brother, Gabriel, 5 months, is progressing but slowly. "He is emotionally related to us," said Iversen. "He'll cuddle and hug, and he can do simple tasks, but he's a little boy with serious problems. There's a terrible frustration in reaching Dove, and it's a special torture for a parent to have a child who can't tell you what he needs or feels." For Shestack's parents, Philadelphia communal leaders Marsha Rose and Jerome Shestack, the diagnosis of Dove's autism was a devastating blow. "We grieved 3 times. Once for the beautiful little boy once for his parents, and finally for ourselves, says Marcia Rose Shestack. But you move on, and Jerry and I are doing everything possible to help CAN because we recognize how much needs to be done. One of the immediate goals of CAN is to establish a Philadelphia chapter. We're very anxious to add Philadelphia to our network that now includes chapters in New Jersey and Orange County, California, said Jonathan Shestack. There's a lot of catching up to do in all areas of autistic research, and we hope Philadelphia will join our effort because autism is a heartbreak that won't go away. And that concludes that article. So the very next day, on October 24th, (1997), Science magazine publishes Whose DNA Is It Anyway? And it's written by Elliot Marshall. Now, this is a long read, but an important one. It really gives an idea of the Autism Genetic Resource Exchange and what was happening around that in this era. All right, so 3 NIH institutes are trying to open up collections of DNA to spur hunts for disease genes. But clinicians fear that molecular biologists will skim the cream off years of their painstaking work. I thought the movie business was rough, said Los Angeles filmmaker John Shestack, but in the last 2 years, I've learned that this business is much rougher. Shestack, who produced the blockbuster movie Air Force One, is talking about the rush to gather and analyze DNA from families who may carry disease-related genes. He acquired an insider's view of the brutal academic struggle for priority when he tried to persuade researchers who have collected genetic data on autism, a disorder that's been diagnosed in his own 5-year-old son, to share their collections. Shestack hoped that sharing might speed the pace of research. But when he approached some of the best and brightest researchers in the field, they told him they'd rather keep control of their own materials. So guess what? Shestack and his wife, Portia Iversen, took matters into their own hands. They started an organization 2 years ago called Cure Autism Now, or CAN, which, along with lobbying for more resources for autism research, will collect and share its own DNA samples. With help from Lee Ducat, a founder of the Juvenile Diabetes Foundation, who used a similar strategy in the 1980s for diabetes research, Shestack and Iversen have created the Autism Genetic Resources Exchange, or the AGRE. In the past 6 months, Shestack claims we have enrolled 200 families. AGRE is training 15 people to conduct diagnostic interviews, getting ready to collect DNA, and contracting with the Coriell cell repositories in Camden, New Jersey to transfer the DNA to immortalize cell lines that will be made available to qualified researchers on a non-exclusive basis. Shestack says this should open the field to new researchers, perhaps even a gunslinger with a big lab who may be new to autism research but can get quick results. All right, he says a lot of people don't like it, Shestack observes, including researchers who have devoted years to the field. He says that's too bad. It would be irresponsible for us to do anything else but share data. So I'm going to come back to this article in the next video. So thank you for exploring a bit more autistic history with me.